In part one of the War on Art, Pressfield names our enemy in this war, and its name is resistance. Resistance is a force within us that keeps us from doing the things that we know are important, valuable, and beneficial. And resistance will convince us that it's easier and more fun to sit and eat that bag of potato chips than it is to go jogging for 30 minutes. Resistance will also seduce us to work on watching a mediocre series on Netflix rather than writing our script for the play we've always wanted to write. Resistance might even trick us into believing our Netflix binging is research for that play. Pressfield goes on to describe some characteristics of resistance, and some of the key characteristics are resistance is an enemy within. It does not come from outside of ourselves, and it can recruit allies to assist it in its self-sabotage. But in the end, your resistance rests within you, my resistance rests within me, and we really can't blame others for our resistance. Resistance can help us identify what our true callings are, because resistance will attack what are the most important and higher callings. Resistance will only attack those higher callings and things that we do to benefit ourselves, our community, or anything that's good and beneficial for us or those around us. Some of the symptoms of resistance are procrastination. In other words, I'll do it tomorrow. Empty calorie activities like sex for sex sake, binge drinking, binge eating, binge watching, or any other activities that are done without mindfulness. Dramatics for attention seeking, and being critical of others, especially those who are battling and beating resistance, otherwise known as being envious of those that are conquering resistance while we're not. So when we allow these symptoms to go without intervention, this can lead to real problems. Denying ourselves our dreams, our goals, and aspirations is poison to our spirit. So it's more than just not getting your work done. It can manifest itself in many unfortunate and tragic ways if it goes too far. So this can manifest in, at best, boredom, restlessness, guilt, lethargy, self-loathing, and at worst, resistance might lead to addiction, distraction, depression, aggression, self-destruction. So now we know what we're fighting, and we know we must fight and why we must fight. So now we need to come up with our battle plan. So now we know that resistance is a force within us that keeps us from doing the things that we know are important, valuable, and beneficial. So when we start to look at our creative work as a profession and understand that there can and will be successes and failures, we can hopefully continue to keep plugging away even after the occasional disappointment. Now we all have the tools already because we've all been working for others. We show up, we're committed to working because we have to earn our keep. We work to survive, and we get paid for our services. We do not, hopefully, over-identify with our titles, and we master the skills of our job. And it's important to remember that creative pros love their work as they have chosen to follow their heart and have devoted their life to their pursuit. So this is a job. If this is a pro, you're a pro at this job of being a creative for you, not for someone else. The difference with a pro is the ability to keep that professional distance, which can help insulate your susceptibility to resistance. And remember, resistance attacks those things that are most important to your heart. Pressfield discusses the Jungian model of the self and the ego as part of the self, along with the personal and collective unconsciousness. He goes on to suggest that resistance dwells in the ego, and the self is where our better angels live. So remember, the ego is part of the self, so I guess in a way the ego is a little gated community within the self's neighborhood. Anyway, ego runs our day-to-day activities and those things that reinforce our understanding of me, myself, and I. So the self, according to Pressfield, manages our higher purposes, like our desire to create and evolve and be better people. In other words, our angels. Ego isn't all that interested in metaphysical worlds and likes to keep our feet on the ground, keeping us plodding away. So the self, on the other hand, is interested in dreams, spirit, and infinite wisdom and consciousness. If we can keep our ego in check while we are doing our creative work and allow ourselves to run with the creative work, we'll find that resistance has a harder time making its way into our achieving, or our work towards achieving our higher purpose. So to sum everything up, I feel like the three main takeaways from the War of Art are that we are in a never-ending war with resistance. We beat back resistance by being professionals in our craft rather than amateurs or hobbyists. And our egos prefer things the way they are, and the self wants to keep us improving and always being better. We can help our ego accept our dedication to our chosen creative path by approaching it as a profession. This won't stop resistance, but it will help manage the power that it has over us. And finally, when we're thinking about resistance, Pressfield introduces the concepts of muses and angels and God and the roles in our creative endeavors. And that, to me, is a little bit of a personal approach. To me personally, it felt like Pressfield was placing some of the responsibility for our success or failures on external factors in the form of spirits and deities, gremlins and ghosts, or at least that's how I read it and how I reacted to it. How open we are to receive those external assistance. To me, the idea of all that just raised more resistance in me. So take that for what it's worth. I do think the book is fantastic, especially part 1 and 2, and I encourage some people might find part 3 to be fantastic. For me, it was the most difficult part to get through because, again, it was not the down-to-earth style of the first 2 parts of the book, but rather took things into a different realm that I wasn't expecting. So I hope you will check out The War of Art. I have a link below to the audiobook, and please head over to my blog for a written version of this critique or this reflection on The War of Art. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Please like, and I will hopefully see you back again soon.